The lilies were dying. Elena Vance noticed it as she arranged the final stem in the crystal vase, her fingers trembling slightly against the cold glass. The petals were already curling at the edges, their pristine white flesh browning with the first whispers of decay. She had chosen them herself this morning, driving 30 minutes to the only florist in the city that imported Dutch lilies. Mark had once told her they reminded him of purity, devotion, of everything he loved about her. She had believed him. Now, standing in the dining room of the penthouse that had never truly felt like home, Elena read at her reflection in the gold-framed mirror above the sideboard. The woman looking back was a stranger, 34 years old, but she looked 50. Her chestnut hair was pulled back so tightly that her temples ached, the severe bun emphasizing the hollows beneath her cheekbones. Her green eyes, once bright with ambition and quiet intelligence, had dulled to the color of stagnant pond water. She wore a cream-colored cashmere sweater and tailored beige trousers, the uniform of the invisible wife, the supportive PA runner who existed only to smooth her husband's path. She was drowning, and no one was throwing her a rope. "You're being dramatic," she whispered to her reflection, the words a familiar mantra in Mark's voice echoing in her head. "You're too sensitive, Elena. Not everything is about you." Her phone buzzed on the marble counter. A text from her mother. "Did you send the money yet? Your father's medical bills aren't going to pay themselves. And don't forget, your sister's tuition is due next week. We're counting on you." Elena's stomach clenched. She had already sent them $15,000 this month. 15,000, and still, it wasn't enough. It would never be enough. She was the family ATM, the dutiful daughter who had mummy ride well and was expected to fund everyone else's lives. Her mother's voice was a constant, nagging presence in her head, a soundtrack of guilt and obligation that had played for so long she no longer knew how to turn it off. She typed back a quick response. "I'll transfer it tonight." She didn't mention that Mark had cut off her access to their joint accounts last week. She didn't mention that she was down to her last $2,000, money she had saved from the freelance coding projects she did in secret. The ones Mark didn't know about, because he would have thrown a fit. "A woman of your standing doesn't need to work," he had said, the words dripping with false gallantry. "Your job is to support me." She had believed him. God, how she had believed him. The sound of the elevator chiming in the foyer snapped her out of her spiral. Her heart, that battered, foolish organ, leaped with pathetic hope. Mark was home. He never came home awry. Maybe tonight would be different. Maybe tonight he would actually look at her, actually see her, actually remember the woman he had once claimed to love. She smoothed down her sweater, checked her reflection one last time. She tried to smile, but it looked more like a grimace. Her hands were shaking. The voices drifted in from the hallway. Mark's laugh, that booming, arrogant sound that used to make her weak in the knees. And another laugh higher, more melodic, familiar. Amanda. Elena's smile froze on her face. Her best friend, her confidante. The woman who had held her hand through every miscarriage, every fight, every lonely night when Mark was working late. The woman who had sat on this very couch and told Elena she deserved better. The woman who had wiped her tears and promised her everything would be okay. Amanda. They swept into the dining room like they owned the place. Mark was still in his tailored charcoal suit, his tie loose around his neck. He looked handsome, successful, powerful. He looked like a man who had never doubted himself for a single second. Amanda was wearing a ski roulette dress that hugged every curve, her glossy blonde hair cascading over her shoulders in perfect waves. Her makeup was flawless, her smile bright. She looked like she had just stepped off a magazine cover. Elena, in her beige trousers and cashmere sweater, felt like a ghost, a faded, forgotten photograph. Mark said, his voice carrying a note of irritation. "You're still in those clothes. I thought we discussed you getting something new for tonight. Something less frumpy." The words hit her like a slap. She looked down at her outfit. She had spent 2 hours picking it out, wanting to look elegant but not try or odd. Wanting to look like the perfect wife. She had failed. "I'm sorry," she heard herself say. I was busy getting dinner ready. Roast lamb, your favorite. And I got the lilies you like." Amarcarelli glanced at the flowers. "Lilies, they smell like a funeral home. And roast lamb, Amanda is vegetarian." "Elena, for God's sake, pay attention." Amanda laughed, that tinkling, musical sound that always seemed to soothe the sharp edges of Mark's moods. "Oh, Mark, don't be so hard on her. Elena has so much on her plate. She's always been a little scattered." She walked over to the dining table, her red nails trailing across the polished mahogany. You really shouldn't have gone to all this trouble. Sweetie. We were just going to grab something quick. MRK has some exciting news. Elena's hair, already fragile, began to crack. Exciting news. Mark walked to the head of the table and sat down in the chair that was always his. He didn't pull out a chair for Amanda. He didn't offer to help her sit. He just sprawled, all arrogance and entitlement, and gestured for Amanda to take the seat next to him. The seat that was supposed to be Elena's. I'm selling the company, Mark said, his voice casual, as if he were discussing the weather. Nexus Tech is being acquired by Sterling Capital. The deal closes next month. We're talking 9 figures, Elena. 9 figures. Elena's world tilted on its axis. 9 figure. Hundreds of millions of dollar raws. But how? Nexus Tech was built on the code she had written, the core infrastructure, the security protocols, the innovations that had made the company the D.A. Rawling of Silicon Valley. She had given it all to him, freely, because she loved him. Because she wanted to help him succeed. Because she was a fool. That's incredible, Marque. She managed, her voice hollow. But wait, the intellectual property, the algorithms. I designed them, shouldn't we? Mark's eyes flashed with cold anger. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. There is no, oh Elena, there's me, who built this company from nothing. And there's you, who sat at home and played house while I was out there making something of myself. But you what? Arky's voice rose. You typed some code on a laptop. You think that makes you a vision awry. I'm the one who sold it. I'm the one who pitched it. I'm the one who faced the board and the investors and the journalists. You were nothing but a typist, a glorified secret eye. The word hit her like a physical blow. She had a degree in computer science from MIT. She had been the valedictorian of her class. She had published papers on neural networks that were still being cited in academic journals. And he called her a secret awry. Amanda reached across the table and placed her hand on Mark's. Day Rawling? Don't be so sharash. She smiled at Elena, a smile that was all sharp edges and hidden malice. She doesn't understand business. She's just a creative. You know how they They get attached to their little projects. They don't understand the bigger picture. Elena read at her best friend. Amanda had been in her life for over a decade. They had met at a tech conference, 2 young women trying to make their way in a male-dominated industry. Amanda had been struggling, and Elena had helped her, had mentored her, had introduced her to Mark, had trusted her with every secret, every FAR, every vulnerability. And now Amanda was sitting in her chair, holding her husband's hand, calling her a creative, like a child's hobby, a little project. I need to sit down, Elena said faintly. She pulled out the chair across from them, but her legs gave out before she could lower herself properly. She stumbled, grabbing the edge of the table to steady herself. The crystal vase wobbled. The lilies shook. God, Mark sighed, rolling his eyes. Can you go 5 minutes without being dramatic? This is why I never bring you to business dinners. You can't handle pressure. You have no grace. Amanda laughed again, that perfect tinkling sound. She's just emotional, Mark. She's always been emotional. Remember when she cried for 2 weeks after the cat died? And it wasn't even her cat. It was her neighbor's. The memory flooded back. A stray tabby that had wandered into her apartment complex. Elena had fed it, befriended it, loved it. The cat had been run over by a car, and Elena had been devastated. Amanda had been there, holding her hand, telling her it would be okay. And now she was using that memory as a weapon, as a punchline. Something inside Elena began to splinter. A crack in the dam she had built around her. Hiradi. RK, she said slowly, her voice relay above a whisper. The code for the encryption software. I wrote it, every line. I have the notes. I have the drafts. I have everything. Mark's expression flickered, just for a second, a flash of alarm, quickly suppressed. You have nothing. Everything belongs to the company. You signed an NDA. You signed away your rights. You signed everything. What? Elena's head was spinning. I never signed anything. Mark reached into his briefcase and pulled out a thick manila folder. He tossed it across the table. It landed with a heavy slap, sending a spray of water from the vase across the polished wood. A lily petal fell, landing on the open page. Elena looked down. The document was dated 6 years ago. Her signature was at the bottom. She recognized it. It was her handwriting. But she had never seen this document before. She had never been told about it. She had never signed it willingly. You forged my signature, she breathed. RK shrugged. I had your power of attorney for that period. You were sick, remember? You had that terrible flu. I had to handle everything. You were in no condition to be making legal decisions. I did what was best for us. He leaned back in his chair, crossing his. You can't prove anything, Elena. It's your word against mine. And my word is worth 9 figures. Your word is worth exactly nothing. The room was spinning. The air was thick. Elena could barely breathe. She looked at Amanda, desperate for some sign of solidarity. Some sign that the woman she had trusted with everything was still on her side. Amanda's face was a mask of pity, but her eyes were laughing. Cruel, triumphant laughter. You should just sign the divorce papers, Amanda said, her voice as sweet as poison. RK has been so generous. He's offering you $2 million raws. That's more than you deserve, honestly, but he's a good man. He wants to take care of you. You can go live in the suburbs, adopt a cat, do whatever it is you do. Just move on. $2 million Rs. A pittance compared to the fortune Mark was about to make. A payoff to make her go away. To erase her from the story. To make her a footnote in her own life. I won't sign anything, Elena said, her voice suddenly steady. That code is mine. Everything I built, everything I created, everything I sacrificed, it's mine, and I will prove it. Arka laughed. It was a loud, ugly sound. Prove it. To whom? You don't have any money. You don't have any resources. You don't have any friends. He gestured to Amanda. You don't even have a best friend. Amanda has been on my side for 3 years now. Did you really think she liked you? She's been using you, Elena. Everyone has been using you. You're pathetic. 3 years. 3 years of late-night phone calls with Amanda, crying about Mark's coldness. 3 years of Amanda assuring her that everything would be okay. 3 years of Amanda feeding her doubts, stoking her insecurities, making her feel smaller and more broken with every conversation. It had all been a game, a long, cruel game. And Elena had been the toy. I don't believe you, Elena said, but the words felt hollow. She looked at Amanda pleading. Amanda, please, tell me this isn't true. Tell me you didn't. Amanda said, and the mask fell away. Her smile was a slash of red lipstick, a predator's grin. You were so easy, Elena, so pathetically grateful for any scrap of attention. Do you know how exhausting it was? Pretending to be your friend. Listening to you whine about your perfect husband, your perfect life, you had everything, and you didn't even appreciate it, so I took it. I took it all. Elena's heart splintered into 1,000 pieces. The betrayal was so total, so complete, that she felt physically ill. Her stomach churned, her vision blurred. I gave you everything? She whispered. I helped you get your job. I vouched for you at the conference. I gave you money when you were struggling. You gave me nothing. Amanda sneered. You gave me the scraps from your table. You gave me your leftovers, and I hated you for it. Every time you smiled at me, every time you called me your best friend, I wanted to scream. You were so blind, so stupid, you deserved this. Ark stood up, buttoning his suit jacket with practiced ease. This is getting tedious. Elena, you have 24 hours to sign the papers. If you don't, I'll have you removed from the penthouse. I'll take everything. The accounts, the CARs, the jewelry, everything. And I'll make sure you never work in this industry again. Your reputation will be destroyed. You'll be lucky to get a job at Starbucks. He walked around the table and stood over her. He was so tall, so imposing. The man she had loved, the man she had sacrificed everything for, looking at her like she was a stain on his shoe. Don't make this harder than it has to be, he said, his voice cold. Just sign the papers and disappear. Elena looked up at him. Something was shifting inside her, something dark and cold and powerful. The cracks in her heart were spreading, but where the dam had broken, something else was rising, not tears, not despair, fury, cold, righteous fury. No, she said. Mark blinked. What did you say? I said no. Elena stood up slowly, using the table for support. Her legs were trembling, but her voice was steady. I won't sign. I won't disappear. You want to destroy me? Mark. You'll have to try harder than that. Because I know every secret you've ever told me. I know about the money you've hidden offshore. I know about the deals you've made, the corners you've cut, the people you've screwed over. And Amanda. She turned to her former friend. I know about the embezzlement, the invoices you faked, the money you stole from your own company. I've seen the papers, Amanda. I've seen everything. Amanda's face went pale. You're bluffing. I'm not, Elena said, and she smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of someone who had nothing left to lose. I have copies, I have evidence, and I will use it all. You want to destroy me, fine. But I'll burn your world to the ground on my way down. Mark's face flushed with rage. You psychotic bitch. You think you can threaten me. You think you have any power here. I'll crush you. I'll destroy you. He lunged for her, his hand raised. Elena flinched, bracing for the blow. And then everything went black, too. The scent of lilies was the first thing she noticed. Sweet, cloying, funereal. She was lying on something soft, a bed, her own bed. But she was supposed to be in the dining room. She was supposed to be signing papers. She was supposed to be. She opened her eyes. The ceiling was familiar. The water stain in the corner. The crack in the plaster near the window. It was her childhood bedroom. But she was no longer a child. She was 25 years old again, wearing a blue silk nightgown that she hadn't worn since her college graduation. Her head throbbed. Her entire body ached. But the pain in her chest was the worst of all. A gaping wound where her heart used to be. The betrayal was still fresh. The bitterness still sharp. She sat up slowly, her hand pressed to her forehead. The room was bathed in soft morning light. Birds were singing outside. The world was peaceful, oblivious to the duar that had just been waged inside her soul. And then she remembered the car, the headlights, the impact, the bone-shattering crunch, the flash of white-hot agony. She had died. She had been hit by a car on her way out of the penthouse. She had been killed, and now she was alive. Whole again, sitting in her childhood bedroom. The day before her life had changed forever. She scrambled out of bed, nearly tripping over her own feet. She ran to the desk where her old flip phone sat next to a pink notebook. She checked the date, July 2nd. Arnido. She was 25 years old. She had a full life ahead of her. A life that didn't have to include RK. A life that didn't have to include Amanda. A life that didn't have to be a slow, painful death by 1,000 cuts. She looked at her reflection in the old vanity mirror. Her green eyes were wide, roddled alive. Her hair was long and healthy, not scraped back in a painful bun. Her cheeks were full, not hollow. She looked like a woman who had her whole future ahead of her. And she did. Elena Vance, the woman who had been killed, erased, and forgotten, was gone. In her place was someone new. Someone who had seen the worst of humanity and survived it. Someone who knew exactly what was coming and was ready to fight back. She walked to her closet and pulled out a sleek, black turtleneck and a pair of sharp, tailored trousers. She dressed quickly, her movements decisive. She was no longer the woman who made herself small to make others comfortable. She was no longer the woman who believed in fairy tales. She was no longer the woman who trusted anyone. She walked to the desk and picked up the flip phone. She dialed a number she had memorized, but had never had the courage to call in her past life. It was the private line of the most powerful venture capitalist in the world. The man who, in her past life, had seen her talent and offered her a lifeline. The man she had refused because Mark had forbidden it. The man who was the key to everything. The phone rang once, twice. On phone, a deep, bored voice answered. Elena took a slow, steadying breath. She looked out the window at the city skyline. A new AR. And she had already won. She just didn't know it yet. Mrs. Sterling, she said, her voice a low, silken purr. My name is Elena Vance. I'm the architect of what's about to be the most valuable company in the world. And you're going to want to meet with me. There was a long pause, then a scoff. I get 100 calls like this a week. What makes you different? Elena smiled. Her revenge had just begun. Because, Sterling, she said, her voice dripping with confident allure, I've already won. I just need you to watch. The lobby of Sterling Capital was a temple to ambition. Marble floors polished to a mirror sheen reflected the soft glow of recessed lighting. A massive abstract sculpture dominated the center of the space, all sharp angles and intersecting planes, a visual representation of the ruthless calculus that drove the financial world. Elena walked through the revolving doors with her chin high, her spine straight, her eyes fixed on the elevator banks ahead. She had arrived 15 minutes early. In her past life, she had been perpetually late, perpetually apologizing, perpetually making herself small to accommodate everyone else's schedules. Not anymore. Now she was the one setting the pace. The receptionist, a sleek woman with a severe bun and a headset, looked up with practiced disinterest. Elena Vance. I have a meeting with Mr. Sterling. The receptionist's perfectly sculpted eyebrows lifted a fraction of an inch. She clearly wasn't used to young women in thrift store blazers walking in off the street and demanding to see the most powerful man in venture capital. But she tapped something into her keyboard, and her expression shifted to cautious respect. Mr. Sterling's office is on the top floor. Take the private elevator. He's expecting you. The private elevator required a key card. The receptionist swiped her own and gestured Elena forward. The doors slid shut with a soft hiss, and Elena was alone, ascending through 30 floors of glass and steel. She watched the city fall away beneath her, the tiny cars and smaller people going about their ordinary lives, oblivious to the war that was about to reshape their world. She caught her reflection in the polished brass of the elevator doors. The woman staring back at her looked different from the one who had died. Fiercer. There was a light in her green eyes that hadn't been there before, a fire that had been banked for too long, and was now blazing out of control. She wore her amour well, the black turtleneck and tailored trousers a declaration of intent. She was not here to beg. She was here to conquer. The doors opened onto a private reception area that was more art gallery than office. A single painting hung on the FAR wall, an abstract explosion of red and gold that seemed to pulse with contained energy. The space was minimalist, almost star, but everything in it had been chosen with the kind of precision that only came with immense wealth. Even the air smelled expensive. A faint whisper of cedar and bergamot. A door to her left swung open, and a man stepped out. Liam Sterling was not what she remembered. In her past life, she had only seen him from a distance. A brief glimpse at a tech conference where he had been surrounded by a retinue of sycophants. She had thought him cold, arrogant. Up close, she saw something else, something she had missed. He was tall, easily 6'3", with a lean, athletic build that his bespoke Shia Arcole suit did nothing to disguise. His dark hair was slightly disheveled, as if he had been running his fingers through it, and his eyes were a stay-rolling shade of winter, blue, sharpeen assessing. He looked like a predator who had just spotted his prey, and she could see the calculations already running behind his gaze. He didn't offer his hand. He simply stood in the doorway, arm crossed, looking at her like she was a puzzle he was trying to solve. "Miss Vance," he said. His voice was a low rumble, the kind of voice that commanded boardrooms and silenced dissenters. "You're a Raleigh." "I don't waste time," Elena replied, meeting his gaze without flinching. "Neither do you. Otherwise, you wouldn't be running one of the most successful investment firms on the planet." The corner of his mouth twitched, a ghost of a smile. Flattery. Interesting approach. Most people try to intimidate me. Intimidation would be a waste of breath. You've seen everything, everything, been pitched every variation of the same desperate dream. I'm not here to impress you with my charisma. She took a step forward, her heels clicking against the marble floor. I'm here to show you a blueprint for the future. And I'm the only person on the planet who can deliver it. Liam studied her for a long moment, then he stepped aside, gesturing for her to enter. "You have 10 minutes, I'm a busy man." She walked past him into his office, and her breath caught in her throat. The room was a cathedral of power. Floor to ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Manhattan, the skyline a jagged crown against the brilliant blue sky. A massive desk of dark walnut dominated the center of the space, its surface pristine except for a single laptop and a silver fountain pen. The walls were lined with bookshelves filled with leather-bound volumes and small, abstract sculptures. Everything about the room said control, dominion, absolute authority. Elena took a seat in the chair opposite his desk, without waiting for an invitation. She crossed her legs smoothly, settled her hands in her lap, and waited. Liam circled his desk and sat down, leaning back in his leather chair. He steepled his fingers, his gaze never leaving her face. 10 minutes rotting now. You're going to receive a pitch from a company called Nexustech in approximately 3 months. Elena said, her voice calm and measured. The founder is a man named Elena Vance. He's charismatic, charming, and completely incapable of understanding the technology he's selling. He will present you with an encryption algorithm that he claims to have developed himself. He's lying. I wrote that algorithm. Every line of code, every security protocol, every innovation that made it breakthrough technology. Liam's expression didn't change. "And you have evidence of this?" "I have the source code, the original drafts, the design documents. I have emails where he asked me to explain specific functions because he couldn't figure them out himself." She reached into her bag and pulled out a slim folder, sliding it across the desk. "I'm not asking you to invest in Nexustech. I'm asking you to invest in me." Liam opened the folder, scanning the first few pages. His eyes moved with machine-like precision, and Elena watched the subtle shift in his expression as he recognized the quality of the work. The code was elegant, efficient, groundbreaking. It was the kind of work that could only come from a true genius, someone who understood the language of computers on a fundamental level. "This is impressive," he admitted, setting the folder aside. "But impressive code is a dime a dozen. What makes you think I should bet on you instead of the man who's already built a company around it?" Elena leaned forward, her eyes blazing. "Because Mark Vance is a fraud. He's going to take that code, build a company, and make billions. And then he's going to destroy me. He's already rotted. In a few months, he'll try to pay me off. He'll try to silence me. He'll do everything in his power to erase me from the story. But I'm not going to let him. I'm going to build something better. Something that makes his algorithm look like a child's toy. And I'm going to do it before he even launches. Liam was silent for a long moment. The only sound in the room was the distant hum of traffic from 30 floors below. He was studying her, and she could feel the weight of his scrutiny, the calculations running behind those winter, blue eyes. You're asking me to bankroll a WAR, he said finally. A personal vendetta disguised as a business venture. I'm asking you to invest in a guaranteed return. Elena corrected. Mark Vance is going to make billions. But he's going to do it on my foundation. I can build a superior product in 18 months. Faster if I have the right resources. And when I launch, his company becomes obsolete overnight. You don't have to choose between investing in him or investing in me. You can invest in me, watch him rise, and then watch me tear him down. By the time it's over, you'll have made more money than you ever could have from him. Liam's eyes narrowed. You're proposing a coup. You want me to help you steal your husband's thunder. I want you to help me take back what's mine. Elena's voice broadened, the steel beneath the silk finally showing. He didn't just steal my work. He stole my identity, my autonomy, my entire sense of self. He gaslit me for years, made me believe I was the problem, made me so dependent on his approval that I forgot who I was. He used me, manipulated me, and when he was done, he tried to discard me like garbage. I'm not asking for charity. I'm not asking for sympathy. I'm asking for a per-honor. Someone who sees the value in what I can do and is willing to bet on me. Liam was quiet again. He picked up the folder, flipping through the pages once more. His expression was unreadable, but there was something in his eyes now that hadn't been there before. Respect. The faintest spark of genuine interest. You're offering me a partnership, he said slowly. Yes. And if I refuse? If I decide to take my chances with your husband? Elena smiled. It was a cold, dangerous smile, the kind of smile that promised retribution. Then you'll have made a very bad bet, because I'm going to win, Liam. With you or without you. But with you, the victory will be sweeter. And much, much more profitable. He read at her for a long moment. Then he laughed. It was a low, surprised sound. The laugh of a man who had just discovered something unexpected. He shook his head, running a hand through his dark hair. You're either the most brilliant woman I've ever met, or the most insane, Elena said. It's the only way to survive in a world built by men. Liam stood up and walked to the window, his back to her. He read out at the city, his hands clasped behind him. I have a reputation, Miss Vance. I don't like losing. If I put my name behind you and you fail, it's not just your career that suffers, it's mine. I've worked too hard to build what I have to risk it on a woman with a grudge. I don't have a grudge, Elena said softly. I have a plan. And I have the skill to execute it. I don't need you to hold my hand. I need you to open doors, that's all. Let me prove myself. Let me show you what I can do. And if I fail, you can walk away. You'll lose nothing but the time you spent watching me. Liam turned, his eyes met hers, and something shifted between them. A recognition, an acknowledgement. He walked back to his desk and sat down, pulling a stack of legal paper from a drawer. You have 90 days. I'll give you an office in this building, a modest salary to live on, and access to the development tools you need. I'll also give you a non-disclosure agreement that puts me as a silent partner in everything you create during that time. If you prove yourself, we'll talk about equity. If you don't, Elena cut in. I promise you that. Liam's lips curved into a smile, a real one this time. I hope so, Miss Vance. For both our sakes. The next few weeks were a blur of sleepless nights and relentless work. Elena threw herself into the development of her new project with a ferocity that surprised even her. She called it Ariadne. After the Greek goddess who guided Theseus through the labyrinth, it was fitting. Mark had trapped her in a maze of lies and manipulation. And now she was going to navigate her way out. And she was going to take everything from him on the way. The office Liam had given her was small, really more than a closet, but it was hers. She plastered the walls with white boards covered in complex diagrams and equations. She worked 18 hours a day, fueled by black coffee and the cold fury that burned in her chest. Every time she wanted to sleep, every time her fingers cramped from typing, every time her eyes burned from staring at a screen, she remembered the look on Mark's face when he'd called her a secret awry. She remembered Amanda's mocking smile. She remembered the feeling of being nothing, of being erased, and she kept going. Liam visited her office often, a silent presence in the doorway. He never interrupted her work, never asked for progress reports, never demanded explanations. But he was always there, watching. She could feel his gaze on her back as she worked. A steady, grounding presence that she hadn't expected. In her past life, she had been so focused on M.A. Archie's approval that she had missed the quiet support of the one person who had actually seen her worth. One night around 2 a.m., she looked up to find him standing in the doorway with a cup of tea. Earl Grey, her favorite. "You should go home," he said, setting the cup on her desk. She replied, her eyes already back on the screen. "I'm close to a breakthrough. The neural network of architecture is finally clicking. If I can just..." "You'll burn out," he interrupted gently. "And then you'll be no use to anyone?" Elena looked up, steer-rolled by the softness in his voice. He wasn't looking at her with the cold calculation she had expected. He was looking at her with something else. Something that looked almost like concern. "I've been doing this my whole life," she said. "I know my limits, do you?" He walked over to the whiteboard, studying the diagrams with an intensity that made her nervous. "You're running on pure adrenaline, Elena. You're not eating. You're barely sleeping. You're pushing yourself so hard that you're gonna break. And then what? You've built a brilliant product, but you'll be too exhausted to defend it. Mark Vance isn't gonna give you a standing ovation. He's gonna come at you with everything he has. If you want to beat him, you need to be stronger than him. And that means taking care of yourself." Elena opened her mouth to argue, but the words died in her throat. He was right. She hated it, but he was right. She had been so focused on revenge that she had forgotten about survival. "The tea," she said finally, reaching for the cup. "Thank you. Drink it, then go home. The code will still be here tomorrow." He paused at the door, looking back at her. "You're going to win, Elena, I can see it in you. But you need to make sure you're still standing when the battle is over." He left before she could respond. Elena read at the empty doorway for a long moment. Then she picked up the tea and took a sip. Perfectly steeped. Just the way she liked it, she smiled, a small, fragile thing. It was the first genuine smile she had allowed herself in years. And then she went back to work, because the battle was far from over, and she had an empire to build. 3 weeks later, Elena walked into a tech conference, her heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and fear. This was her first public appearance since her rebirth, her first opportunity to show the world what she was capable of. The conference was a who's who of the tech industry. Investors, founders, journalists, all hungry for the next big thing. And there, in the center of the room, surrounded by a crowd of sycophants, was... He looked exactly as she remembered him. Charismatic, confident, utterly convinced of his own brilliance. Amanda was at his side, her arm linked through his, her smile bright and fake. Elena watched them from across the room, and she felt nothing, no pain, no longing, no regret, just cold, clear purpose. She walked through the crowd with the confidence of someone who had nothing left to lose. She was wearing a stunning emerald dress that hugged her curves and showed off the toned arms she had worked so hard to achieve. Her hair was loose, a cascade of chestnut waves that caught the light. She looked like a goddess of ar, and everyone she passed turned to stare. Mark spotted her, his face went pale, then red, a tide of anger surging beneath his practiced composure. Amanda's grip on his arm tightened. They looked like two deer caught in the headlights of an oncoming truck. A polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. She walked past them without a word, moving toward the stage, where the keynote speaker was just finishing his presentation. She had something to say, and everyone was going to hear it. The keynote speaker had just finished his presentation on the future of blockchain technology, and the audience was beginning to disperse into the networking clusters that defined events like this. Champagne flutes clinked. Business cards exchanged hands. Laughter rippled through the crowd like wind through wheat. Elena stood at the edge of the stage, her heart pounding a steady, controlled rhythm against her ribs. She had not been scheduled to speak. She had not been invited to present. She was an uninvited guest at a party that was about to become very uncomfortable for certain people. But she had something to say, and she was going to say it. She stepped onto the stage as the moderator was gathering his notes, her heels clicking against the polished wood with the precision of a metronome. The moderator looked up, startled, his mouth opening to protest. But Elena's gaze was fixed on the crowd, and she spoke before he could form the words. "Excuse me," she said, her voice amplified by the microphone she had stolen from its stand. "I have something to say, and I promise it will be more interesting than anything you've heard tonight." The crowd murmured, a wave of confusion rippling through the room. Faces turned toward the stage, some curious, some annoyed, some already reaching for their phones to capture whatever spectacle was about to unfold. Mark, who had been in the middle of a conversation with a potential investor, looked up. His face was a mask of barely-controlled fury. Amanda was beside him, her hand gripping his arm so tightly her knuckles were white. It was a sharp, predatory, the kind of smile that promised blood. "I know what you're all thinking," she continued, her voice steady and clear. "Who is this woman? And why is she interrupting your evening? My name is Elena Vance. Some of you might know me as the wife of Mark Vance, the founder of Nexus Tech, but that's not who I am. That's just the role I was forced to play." She paused, letting the silence hang. The crowd was fully focused on her now, the hum of conversation replaced by a tense, expectant quiet. "Ark Vance is about to announce a revolutionary new encryption product," Elena said. "He's going to stand on a stage just like this one and tell you he invented it. He's going to tell you he's a genius, a visionary, a pioneer. And he's going to lie." A ripple of shock went through the audience. Mark's face was now a deep mottled red. He was pushing through the crowd, Amanda trailing behind him, his eyes fixed on Elena with murderous intent. "He's going to lie," Elena repeated, "because that product was written by me. Every line of code, every security protocol, every innovation that makes it worth billions of dollars. I wrote it in the middle of the night while he was sleeping. I wrote it while he was telling me I wasn't smart enough to work in his company. I wrote it while he was slowly erasing my identity, piece by piece." She pulled a slim USB drive from her pocket and held it up. "On this drive is the complete, unredacted history of that development. Emails, design, source code revisions, everything. I'm not here to make accusations. I'm here to present evidence. Because the truth has a way of coming out, and I'm done being silent." Mark reached the edge of the stage, his voice a furious snarl. "Get down from there right now! You're delusional! You're an inconvenience," Elena cut in, her voice cool, "a problem to be solved. A mistake you made when you were young and stupid." She shook her head slowly. "No, Mark. I'm the woman who built your empire. And I'm the woman who's going to take it away from you." The room erupted, cameras flashed. Journalists were scribbling furiously. The moderator was trying to regain control of the stage, but Elena had already stepped back, her work done. She made her way through the chaos, moving with the calm, unhurried grace of someone who had just set a bomb and was walking away from the explosion. The crowd parodied for her, their eyes wide with a mixture of shock and admiration. She didn't look back at Mark. She didn't need to. She could feel his rage burning through the air behind her, a palpable heat that made her smile. Pooh. The ride back to her apartment was a blur. Elena sat in the back of the taxi, her hands trembling slightly in her lap. The adrenaline was beginning to fade, and in its place was a bone-deep exhaustion that made her feel like she was moving through water. But she was also exhilarated. The first shot had been fired. The duel had officially begun. When she reached her building, she found Liam waiting for her in the lobby. He was leaning against the reception desk, his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. But there was something in his eyes that she hadn't seen before. Pride. "That was a bold move," he said, falling into step beside her as she walked toward the elevator. "I didn't expect you to go public so soon." "Neither did Mark," Elena replied, her voice flat. "That was the point. He's been expecting me to come at him through lawyers and courts. He wasn't prepared for me to come at him through the court of public opinion." Liam nodded slowly. "You've made yourself a target. He's going to come after you with everything he has. His lawyers are already drafting statements. I've had 3 calls from journalists in the last hour." "Good," Elena said. "Let them come. I'm ready for them." The elevator doors slid open, and they stepped inside. Liam pressed the button for her floor, and they ascended in silence. When they reached her apartment, Elena unlocked the door and stepped inside, leaving it open behind her. Liam hesitated for a moment, then followed her in. The apartment was small but functional. A tiny kitchen, a cramped living room, a bedroom that was really large enough for her bed. It was a far cry from the penthouse she had shared with Mark, but it was hers. She had paid for it with money she had earned. She had decorated it with things she had chosen. It was the first space that had truly belonged to her in years. Liam looked around, his expression unreadable. "This is where you've been living. It's where I've been working," Elena corrected, walking to the small desk in the corner and powering up her laptop. "I don't need luxury, I need results." Liam was quiet for a moment. Then he walked over to the tiny kitchen and started opening cabinets. "You don't have any food." "I wasn't hungry." "You need to eat." He pulled out a box of pasta and a can of tomatoes that were the only things in the cupboard. Do you have any olive oil? Elena stared at him. What are you doing? I'm making you dinner. He said it like it was the most obvious thing in the world. You can't fight a DWAR on an empty stomach. And from the looks of this place, you haven't had a proper meal in days. She wanted to argue. She wanted to tell him she didn't need his help, that she was fine, that she could take care of herself. But the words wouldn't come, because he was right. She was starving, and not just for food. She sat down at her desk while he moved around the tiny kitchen with surprising competence. He found a cutting board, a knife, a pot. He was making something simple, but the smell of king garlic and tomatoes filled the apartment, making her stomach growl. I didn't expect you to be a COK, she said finally. I didn't expect you to be a revolutionary. He replied without looking up. We're both full of surprises. Elena smiled, a small, reluctant thing. I'm not a revolutionary. I'm just a woman who's finally stopped letting people walk all over her. Isn't that what a revolution is? Lamb turned, a wooden spoon in his hand. One person deciding they've had enough, and then inspiring others to do the same. She met his gaze, and for a moment, the world seemed to stop. There was something in his eyes that made her breath catch in her throat. Something that went beyond business, beyond strategy. Something that felt almost like recognition. She looked away first, her cheeks flushing. I'm not trying to inspire anyone. I just want my life back. You'll get it, Liam said quietly. I've seen what you can do. The code you're building? It's the most brilliant work I've ever seen. And I've seen a lot of brilliant work. Elena looked up, surprised by the sincerity in his voice. You really think so? I know so. He turned back to the stove. I didn't invest in you because I felt sorry for you, Elena. I invested in you because you're a genius, and because I wanted to see what you could do when you had the right support. She didn't know what to say. In her past life, Mark had never once complimented her work. He had always taken credit for it. Always made her feel like she was just a tool in his success. Someone, especially someone like Liam, acknowledge her talent with such sincerity. It was overwhelming. She was still trying to process her emotions when her phone buzzed. She looked down at the screen. It was her mother. The news is reporting that you've made a scene at some tech conference. Her mother's voice said through the speaker, shrill and accusatory. What have you done? Mark's been calling us all evening. He's threatening to stop sending money. Your father needs his medication, and I don't have. Elena hung up. Her hand was shaking. She stared at the phone for a long moment, the familiar guilt clawing at her chest. Her mother's voice was a poison she had been drinking for years. A poison that made her feel like she was responsible for everyone else's problems. She had already given her mother $15,000 this month. It hadn't been enough. It would never be enough. Your mother? Liam asked quietly. Elena nodded, not trusting her voice. She's worried about money. She's always worried about money. Even when I give her everything I have, it's never enough. I'm never enough. She laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. I've spent my whole life trying to be enough. For my parents. For Amanda. And it was never enough. I was never enough. Liam set down the wooden spoon and walked over to her. He crouched beside her chair, his eyes meeting hers at eye level. You're more than enough, he said, his voice soft but firm. You're the most brilliant person I've ever met. You're a survivor, you're a fighter, and you're gonna win this war. But you need to stop fighting battles that don't matter. Your mother's greed is not your responsibility. Mark's ego is not your problem. Amanda's jealousy is not your burden to see a rye. You're free, Elena. You just need to believe it. Tiara's pricked at the corners of her eyes. She had been so focused on revenge, so consumed by the need to destroy the people who had hurt her, that she had forgotten about the other part of the equation. The part that was about building something new, something better. I don't know how to be free, she admitted, her voice really above a whisper. I've been trapped for so long that I've forgotten what it feels like. You aren't, Liam said. One day at a time. One battle at a time. He reached out and took her hand, his grip warm and steady. But you don't have to do it alone. I'm here. And I'm not going anywhere. She looked at him, at the kindness in his winter blue eyes, and felt something shift inside her. Something that had been locked away for a long, long time. She squeezed his hand. He smiled, a real smile that transformed his face. Don't thank me yet. We've got a lot of work to do. But first, she laughed, a surprised, genuine sound that she hadn't expected. It felt good, it felt like hope. The next few weeks were a blur of late nights and intense preparation. Elena's code was coming together faster than she had anticipated. The neural network was functioning beautifully, and the security protocols she had embedded were elegant and robust. Ariadne was going to be everything she had promised, and more. But Manrake wasn't idle. He had launched a media offensive, painting himself as the victim of a delusional, embittered ex-wife. The tabloids had a field day with the story, and Elena found herself at the center of a firestorm she hadn't anticipated. She was at her desk late one night when Liam burst into her office. His face grim. "We have a problem." "What now?" she asked, looking up from her keyboard. "Your mother went on the news. She gave an interview to one of the tabloids. She's claiming that you're mentally unstable, that you fabricated everything, that MRK is the real victim." He paused, his jaw. "She also claimed that you have a history of lying and manipulation, that you've been abusive to her for years." Elena felt the blood drain from her face. Her mother, her own mother. She knew that her mother had always favored Mark because he was rich and successful. She knew that her mother had always seen Elena as a meal ticket, but to publicly betray her, to call her unstable and abusive. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. "I can't control what she says. I can only control what I do," Liam said, his voice gentler now. "But the damage is done. The court of public opinion is fickle, and right now, it's turning against you." Elena closed her eyes, feeling the familiar weight of despair pressing down on her. But then she thought of the code on her screen. The code that was going to change the world. The code that was going to set her free. "Then I'll give them something else to talk about," she said, opening her eyes. "I'll launch Riot. Tomorrow, I'll show them who I really am." Liam stared at her, his expression shifting from concern to something that looked like admiration. "You're ready." "I've been ready my whole life," she said. "I just needed the courage to show it." He nodded slowly. "I'll make the arrangements. We'll do it at the Grand Ballroom in the plaza, 2 days from now. I'll invite the top journalists, the biggest investors, everyone who matters. It's going to be the event of the year." "I don't need the event of the year," Elena said. "I need to be seen. I need to be art. And I need to prove that I'm not the woman they think I am." "You're going to do more than that. You're going to become the woman you were always meant to be." He left to start making calls, and Elena turned back to her computer. The screen glowed with the code she had written. The code that was going to change everything. She ran her fingers over the keyboard, feeling the power of the words she had crafted. Ariadne. The thread that would lead her out of the labyrinth and into the light. But her mother's words still echoed in her head, a dark counterpoint to her rising hope. She had been betrayed by so many people in her life. Amanda, her own parents, people she had trusted, loved, sacrificed for. She couldn't trust anyone, not even herself, not anymore. But she looked at the code, and she felt a flicker of something. Something that felt almost like certainty. A knock on her door made her look up. Liam was back, his phone still in his hand. "One more thing," he said. "I found out who MRK's new investor is. The one who's been funding his media campaign." Elena's heart skipped a beat. "Who?" "Leonard Thorne," Liam said, his voice grim. "The head of Thorne Industries. He's been trying to dismantle your case behind the scenes. He's the reason your mother's interview got so much coverage." Elena felt a cold chill run down her spine. Leonard Thorne was a billionaire, a media mogul, a man who could make or break anyone with a single phone call. He was also MRK's new business partner. The man who was going to help MRK destroy her. "I didn't know MRK knew Leonard Thorne," she said slowly. "He didn't." Thorne approached him. "He wants in on the encryption deal. And he's willing to burn you to the ground to get it." Elena absorbed this information, her mind racing. Thorne was a powerful enemy. But he was also a man who was blinded by his own arrogance. And arrogance was a weakness she could exploit. "Thank you for telling me," she said finally. "I need to adjust my strategy." Liam nodded. "I'm here to help. Whatever you need." She looked at him, at the steady, unwavering support in his eyes, and felt a weird spread through her chest. She had been so focused on revenge that she had forgotten that there were still good people in the world. People like Liam. She smiled a real smile. "What I need is time. And a lot of caffeine." He laughed, and the sound was like music. "I can get you the caffeine. The time is going to be a rotter." They worked through the night, side by side, building the launch that was going to change everything. The battle was just beginning, and Elena intended to win. The Plaza Hotel's Grand Ballroom was a masterpiece of gilded opulence. Crystal chandeliers cascaded from the vaulted ceiling, scattering prismatic light across the sea of black, Thai attendees. The walls were draped in champagne-colored silk, and massive arrangements of white roses and peonies overflowed from crystal urns at every corner. It was the kind of setting that demanded attention, demanded reverence, demanded that everyone present remember exactly where they stood in the hierarchy of power. Elena stood in the green room backstage, her reflection staring back at her from a full-length mirror. She was wearing crimson, a stunning, floor-length gown of blood-red silk that hugged her curves like a second skin, with a plunging neckline and a slit that rose dangerously high on her left thigh. Her chestnut hair was swept into an elegant chignon, diamond studs gleaming at her eyes. She had never looked more beautiful. She had never looked more dangerous. Liam stood behind her, his reflection joining hers in the mirror. He was devastating in his tuxedo, the stark black and white of formal somehow making his winter blue eyes even more arresting. He looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite read, something between admiration and something deeper. "You look like you're about to conquer the world," he said, his voice low. Elena replied, her smile sharp, one empire at a time. The ballroom beyond the heavy velvet curtains was buzzing with anticipation. The cream of the tech world had assembled, venture capitalists, CEOs, journalists, influencers, and at the center of it all, seated at the front table, were RK and Amanda. Elena had made sure they were invited. She wanted them to have a front-row seat to their own destruction. RK was wearing a smug expression, clear, confident that whatever Elena had planned would be a failure. Amanda was beside him, a tight smile plastered on her face, her blonde hair gleaming under the chandeliers. They looked like the picture of success, the power couple of Silicon Valley. They had no idea what was coming. Liam stepped closer, his hand resting briefly on her Bari shoulder. "Are you ready?" Elena met his eyes in the mirror. "I've been ready my whole life." He nodded, stepping back. "Then let's go show them what you're made of." The curtains parted, and Elena walked onto the stage. The room fell silent. Every eye turned to her, the collective breath of the audience held in suspense. The crimson gown caught the light, making her look like she was wrapped in flame. She was beautiful, powerful, untouchable. She reached the center of the stage and faced the crowd, her gaze sweeping over them with calm authority. She didn't look at Mark. She didn't need to. She could feel his eyes on her, burning with hatred and something that looked almost like fear. "Good evening," she said, her voice amplified by the microphone, rang through the vast room. "My name is Elena Vance. Some of you know me as the woman who stood up at a tech conference and accused her husband of stealing her work. Some of you know me as the woman who was publicly disowned by her own mother. And some of you know me as the woman who, according to the tabloids, is unstable, manipulative, and completely delusional." She paused, letting the words sink in. A murmur rippled through the crowd, a mixture of shock and curiosity. "I'm here tonight to show you who I really am," she continued. "I'm not a victim. I'm not a delusional ex-wife. I'm an architect, a Cretan Arai. And I've built something that's going to change the world." She gestured to the massive screen behind her, and the lights dimmed. The screen flickered to life, displaying a sleek, elegant interface. A single word: Appia Reda Riadan. "RK Vance's company Nexustech is about to launch a product called Aegis," Elena said. "He'll tell you it's revolutionary. He'll tell you it's the future of encryption. He'll tell you he invented it, and he'll be lying. I wrote that code. Every protocol. Every innovation that made it valuable. I have the receipts. I have the evidence. And tonight, I'm going to show you what happens when you give a true genius the resources to build something of her own." She tapped her tablet, and the screen exploded into a live demonstration. Ariadne's interface came to life, a complex web of neural networks and predictive algorithms that seemed to pulse with intelligence. The crowd gasped as the system began to run a simulation, predicting security threats before they happened, adapting to new data in real time. "This is Ariadne," Elena said, her voice ringing with confidence. "It doesn't just protect data, it anticipates attack. It learns from patterns, it evolves. Aegis is a wall, Orion is an airmine. And I'm going to launch it in 3 months. Before Nexustech even gets off the ground." She paused, letting the demonstration continue. The crowd was captivated, their eyes fixed on the screen, their mouths slightly open. This was the future, and they were watching it unfold. From the front table, RK rose to his feet, his face purple with rage. "This is absurd. She's lying. She's desperate. She's—" Elena cut in, her voice cool and steady. "Sit down. You're embarrassing yourself." The crowd laughed, a nervous ripple of sound. Mark's face went from purple to white, his fists clenched at his sides. Amanda was trying to pull him back into his seat, her face a mask of panic. I'm not lying, Elena continued, turning back to the crowd. I have the evidence, the source code, the design documents, the emails where he asked me to explain his own product to him. She pulled a flash drive from her clutch, holding it up. This is everything. And I'm not just going to hand it over to a lawyer. I'm going to release it. To the public, to the press. To anyone who wants to see the truth. The room erupted. Journalists were shouting questions, their cameras flashing. Investors were on their phones, calling their offices, demanding to know what was happening. Chaos had broken out. But Elena stood calm at the center of the storm, her expression serene. She had done what she came to do. The truth was out. The rest was just cleanup. Liam was at her side in an instant, his hand on her elbow. We need to go. Now. Before the press mobs you, she nodded, allowing him to guide her off the stage and through a side door. The hallway was empty, a quiet corridor of marble and muted lighting. They moved quickly, their footsteps echoing in the silence. You did it, Lime said, his voice filled with awe. You actually did it. It's not over yet, Elena replied, her heart pounding. Mark's not going to take this lying down. He's going to fight back. And Leona Ardthorne is going to come after me with everything he has. Liam's grip on her arm tightened. But you've got an arame now. The press is on your side. The public is on your side. And I'm on your side. We'll figure this out. They reached the private elevator, and Liam swiped his key CR. The doors slid open, and they stepped inside. As the doors closed, sealing them off from the chaos of the ballroom, Elena let out a long, shuddering breath. She had won this round. But the WR was far from over. The next few days were a whirlwind of media appearances, interviews, and legal consultations. Elena's face was plastered across every tech publication in the country. She was hailed as a genius, a survivor, a feminist. The story of her betrayal and triumph captured the public imagination, and suddenly, she was the most talked about woman in the tech world. But Mark wasn't. He had launched a counter-offensive, claiming that Elena had fabricated the evidence, that she was suffering from a mental breakdown, that she was dangerous and unstable, and he had Leon Ardthorne's media empire behind him, a machine of propaganda that could shape the narrative in ways Elena couldn't match. She was in her office, reviewing legal documents, when her phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. I know what you did. I know about the code. I know about the evidence. And I have something you want. Meet me at the waterfront pier, 8 p.m. Come alone, or your secrets go public. Elena's TA read at the screen, her blood running cold. Amanda. It had to be Amanda. But what did she mean by secrets? What could Amanda possibly know that would threaten her? She considered ignoring the message. She considered calling Liam. But she knew that if she didn't go, Amanda would do something rash. Something that could derail everything she had worked for. She grabbed her coat and left the office without telling anyone. The waterfront pier was deserted, the cold wind whipping off the river. Elena stood alone, her coat pulled tight around her, waiting. The sky was day, the city lights reflecting off the water like scattered diamonds. She heard arty footsteps behind her and turned. Amanda emerged from the shadows, her blonde hair windblown, her eyes wild. She was wearing a cheap black dress, her makeup smudged. She looked nothing like the polished, perfect woman Elena had known. You came, Amanda said, her voice trembling. I didn't think you would. I came, Elena replied, her voice flat. What do you want? Amanda laughed, a hollow, desperate sound. What do I want? I want you to lose. I want you to suffer. I want you to feel what I felt when you humiliated me in front of everyone. Elena studied her former friend, her expression unreadable. You humiliated yourself, Amanda. I just showed the world who you really are. You think you're so much better than me. Amanda's voice rose, shrill and angry. You think you're a hero? You're just a bitter, jealous woman who couldn't hold on to her husband. I gave him everything you couldn't. I was what he needed. I was everything. You were a placeholder, Elena said calmly. He was going to discard you too, just like he discarded me. And when he did, you would have been left with nothing. Amanda's face twisted with rage. He loves me! He loves me, not you! He never loved you. He used you. We both used you. I know, Elena said, her voice soft. I've always known. That's why I'm not angry at you, Amanda. I'm just disappointed. You had so much potential. You could have been anything. But you chose to be his shadow. You chose to be nothing. Amanda's, a primal sound of fury and pain. She lunged at Elena, her hands extended, her nails sharp, but Elena was ready. She stepped aside, grabbed Amanda's arm, and twisted. Amanda fell to the ground, gasping. You're pathetic, Elena said, her voice cold. You're exactly what he made you. Weak, desperate, meaningless. And you always will be. She turned and walked away, leaving Amanda sobbing on the pier. She found Liam waiting for her in her appartement, his face etched with worry. Where were you? I called your phone 20 times. I had to handle something, Elena said, shrugging off her coat. Amanda. She tried to threaten me, Liam's jaw tight. Is she gonna be a problem? Not anymore, Elena said, her voice flat. She was never the threat. Leon Arthorne is. He's the one who's been pulling the strings. Liam nodded slowly. I've been looking into him. He's got a history of destroying his rivals. He's ruthless, but he's also arrogant. He's been getting sloppy. Elena looked at him, her eyes sharp. What do you mean? I mean he's been laundering money through a shell company. Liam said, his voice low. I have proof. If we play it right, we can use it against him. Elena's heart began to race. How did you find this out? I have sources, Liam said. And I have a vested interest in making sure Elena Ardthorne doesn't destroy you. She looked at him, at the determined set of his jaw, the fire in his winter blue eyes. She had been so focused on her own revenge that she had forgotten he was fighting alongside her, fighting for her. Thank you, she said softly, for everything. Liam stepped closer, his gaze intense. You don't have to thank me. I'm not doing this for thanks. Then why are you doing it? He reached out and cupped her face, his hand arm against her cheek. Because I've never met anyone like you. Because you're the most brilliant, bravest woman I've ever known. Because I want to see you win, not just for you, for all of us. For everyone who's been told they're not enough. Elena felt tears prick at her eyes. Liam. He leaned in, his forehead resting against hers. I'm not going anywhere, Elena. I'm in this for the long haul. Whatever it takes. She closed her eyes, allowing herself to feel the worth of his presence. For the first time in years, she felt safe. She felt seen. She opened her eyes and looked at him, a new fire burning in her chest. Then let's go after Thorne. Let's take down the entire empire. Together, Liam smiled, a slow, dangerous smile. Together, they stood there, bound by a red purpose, a red vision. The duel was far from over, but for the first time, Elena felt like she was no longer fighting alone. She had found something more valuable than revenge. She had found a partner, and together, they were going to change the world. The courthouse steps were slick with rain, the gray sky overhead mirroring the steel and concrete of the city that had witnessed Elena's rise and fall. She stood at the bottom of the marble staircase, her crimson umbrella a slash of defiant color against the monochrome morning. The media had gathered in force, cameras poised, reporters jostling for position. They had come to witness the final act of a drama that had captivated the nation. Elena wore black today, a tailored pantsuit that whispered power, with a crimson silk blouse beneath. The same crimson as the gown she had worn the night she had announced Ariadne to the world. It was a deliberate choice, a reminder. She had risen from the ashes once, and she would do it again. Liam was beside her, his hand resting lightly on the small of her back. He was a fortress in his charcoal overcoat, his winter blue eyes scanning the crowd with the calm vigilance of a man who had seen too much to be surprised by anything. He had been her anchor through the storm, the steady presence that had kept her from drowning when the waves grew too high. Ready? He asked, his voice low. Elena looked up at the courthouse, at the imposing columns and the bronze doors that seemed to weigh 1,000 tons. Somewhere inside those walls, MRK and Leon Ardthorne were waiting to destroy her, waiting to take everything she had built. But she had something they didn't. She had the truth, and she had Liam. Ready, she said, and she meant it. The courtroom was packed. Every seat was filled with journalists, investors, and curious onlookers. The gallery buzzed with whispered speculation as Elena walked through the doors, her heels clicking against the polished wood floor. MRK was already seated at the defense table, his lawyers flanking him like vultures. He looked haggard, his usual charisma eroded by weeks of relentless pressure. His eyes met Elena's, and for a moment, she saw something she had never seen before. Far. Leon Ardthorne was beside him, a shark in a bespoke suit. His silver hair was slicked back, his face a mask of controlled fury. He had been the mastermind behind the media campaign that had tried to destroy Elena's reputation. He had poured millions into MRK's defense, using his vast resources to twist the narrative. But Elena had been playing a longer game. The judge entered and the room fell silent. The proceedings began, a PA raid of lawyers and documents and legal arguments. Elena's team presented her evidence, the mountain of emails and source code and design documents that proved she was the true architect of Nexus Tech. MRK's team fought back, claiming she had fabricated everything. And then it was Elena's turn to speak. She rose from her seat and walked to the witness stand, her movements calm and deliberate. She raised her right hand and swore to tell the truth, her voice steady and clear. Vance, the prosecutor began. Can you tell the court about your relationship with the defendant, Arcance? Elena looked across the courtroom at Mark. His face was pale, his knuckles white where he gripped the table. He looked small, diminished. The man who had once made her feel so insignificant was now just a broken figure in an expensive suit. I'm a Reborn Vance when I was 24 years old, she began, her voice rang through the silent courtroom. I was young, I was ambitious. I was deeply in love with a man who told me he saw my potential, who told me we would build a future together. She paused, letting the weight of the words settle. But the future we built was a lie. He used me. He took my work, my ideas, my identity. He called me a secret rye. He made me feel like I was nothing. And for 10 years, I believed him. The courtroom was silent. Even the journalists had stopped typing, their fingers frozen over their keyboards. Until the night he tried to discard me, Elena continued. He told me he was selling the company. He told me to sign papers that would have erased me completely. And he did it with my so-called best friend by his side, laughing at me. I walked out of that penthouse, and I was hit by a car. I died that night. She paused, her eyes sweeping over the stunned faces in the gallery. But I was given a second chance. And I'm not going to waste it. The courtroom erupted. The judge banged his gavel, calling for order. Elena stood at the center of the chaos, her expression calm, her eyes fixed on Mark. She had told the truth, the whole truth. And now it was up to the jury to decide. The deliberation took 3 days. Elena spent them in her apartment, staring at the walls waiting. Liam stayed with her, a quiet, steady presence. They didn't speak much. There was nothing left to say. Everything that could be said had already been spoken. On the 3rd day, she received the news. The jury had reached a verdict. She walked into the courtroom one last time, her heart pounding in her chest. The gallery was packed, the tension so thick it was almost suffocating. Mark was at the defense table, his face gray with fear. Leona Ardthorne was beside him, his expression unreadable. The judge read the verdict. On the charge of fraud, the jury finds the defendant Mark Vance guilty. On the charge of intellectual property theft, the jury finds the defendant guilty. On the charge of... Elena stopped listening. She had heard enough. The courtroom exploded. Mark's lawyers were Thorne was shouting. The journalists were scrambling for their phones. But Elena was already walking out, her head high, her eyes dry. She had won. The victory was sweet, but it was also hollow. Mark was going to prison. Leona Ardthorne was facing his own legal battles. Amanda had disappeared, her reputation destroyed. Elena had gotten her revenge. But standing on the courthouse steps, looking out at the sea of cameras and reporters, Elena felt something unexpected, emptiness. The battle was over, but the douleur had left scars that would never fully heal. Leon Appy read beside her, his hand finding hers. You did it, he said, his voice filled with awe. You actually did it. I did, Elena said, but her voice was flat. And now what? Liam looked at her, his expression softening. Now you live. You build your empire. You become the woman you were always meant to be. Elena looked down at her hand, at the way his fingers intertwined with hers. She thought about the lilies that had been dying on the dining room table, the petals browning, the scent of decay in the air. She thought about the taste of ash in her mouth, the feeling of being erased, of being nothing. She was not nothing anymore. She was everything, but the emptiness remained. A month later, Elena stood in the penthouse that had once been her prison. She had bought it at auction, the proceeds going to a charity for women who had survived domestic abuse. The place was unrecognizable. The walls had been painted a soft, creamy white, the furniture was modern, sleek, and hers. The lilies were gone, replaced by a single orchid that sat on the dining room table, its petals a deep, vibrant purple. Liam was there, watching her from the doorway. He had been her constant companion through the aftermath, helping her navigate the complexities of her new life. Their relationship had deepened into something that felt almost like love. Almost, you kept the apartment, he said, walking into the room. I needed to reclaim it, Elena replied, turning to face him. To prove that I could. He nodded slowly, his eyes scanning the space. It looks different, it feels different. It is different. She walked to the window, looking out at the city she had once been so desperate to escape. I spent so much time being a victim, Liam. So much time feeling small and helpless and alone. I forgot what it felt like to be myself. And now, he asked, coming to stand beside her. She smiled, a slow, genuine smile. Now I remember. Liam reached out and took her hand. What comes next? Elena was quiet for a long moment. She thought about the code she had written, the company she was building, the empire she was going to create. She thought about the women who had reached out to her, telling her that her story had inspired them, that she had given them the courage to fight back. And she understood, finally, that her revenge had never been about Mark. It had never been about Amanda or her mother or any of the people who had wronged her. It had been about finding herself, about becoming the woman she was always meant to be. Next, she said, turning to look at Liam, we'll build something that lasts. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a single lily petal, dried and preserved from the night she had died. She had kept it as a reminder of the woman she used to be, the woman she would never be again. She opened the window and let the petal fly into the wind. Goodbye, she whispered. Liam wrapped his arms around her, pulling her close. You're not alone anymore, he said, his voice low. You never will be again. Elena leaned into him, feeling the dull wrath of his embrace, the steady beat of his heart against her back. She had been broken, shattered, destroyed, but she had rebuilt herself, piece by piece. And she was stronger than ever. She looked out at the skyline, at the city that had tried to break her. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of crimson and gold. It was beautiful. It was hopeful. It was a promise of everything that was yet to come. I'm ready, she said softly. Liam kissed her hair. I know you are. They stood together, watching the sunset, the future stretching out before them like an open road. Elena had lost everything, and she had found everything. The battle was over, the war was won, and the rest of her life was just beginning.